Our next speaker is Ms. Marin.
The voices of my family members downstairs filled my sleepy head and coaxed me awake. As I sat up in bed, I wiped my eyes and reached for my phone. I tugged on the charger to release it, and about a dozen texts and several missed calls appeared, all from him. I unlocked my phone and scrolled quickly through them. Instead of replying, I tossed my phone aside. I pulled my comforter up to my chin and let my head sink back into my pillow. 3 hours of sleep was not enough, I thought to myself. I'll deal with this later. Starting my sophomore year, I was in a relationship that was long distance. Initially, everything seemed great. We got along and he treated me well. But as months passed by, it became an increasingly difficult situation. I was being manipulated and lied to regularly. So much so that by the end of the relationship, I took everything with a grain of salt. For a couple months, I wanted to put an end to the relationship, but anytime I tried, I was bombarded by threats. It was impossible for me to know if he was serious or if it was part of the manipulation. The pressure of it all weighed on me greatly until September of last year, when it finally came to an end. When I ended it, he did not take it well. I decided it would be best to go home for a couple of days. I needed time to work through everything that had happened and just be home with my family. About a week later, when I reluctantly returned to Brooks, I was struggling to keep my head above water. Everything felt too heavy at the time. My academics, friendships, and just rolling out of bed when my alarm went off. The idea was almost incomprehensible to me that I had just turned 17 and was experiencing an adult issue. My biggest worry, not even 6 months prior, was whether I would pass my driver's test or not. And now I was constantly worried about the health of another person and what he might do. I was also worried about who knew what. I didn't know which staff members and classmates knew what was going on. I felt like I was inside of a snow globe. My thoughts and worries were everywhere, floating around my mind like winter flurries. Growing up, I had always been confident and self assured. The relationship changed that. For months, if I was upset by him, I was told that I was the problem, that I was being difficult, and that I was the reason he was acting this way. For a long time, he made me believe it too. At the time, I didn't realize that this was actually gaslighting, a form of manipulation and emotional abuse. Sometimes I would end up apologizing for things that were not at all my fault, either because I had been convinced they were, or just so I could get him off the phone at 3 a.m. I didn't fully realize the toll this was taking on me until the relationship was fully over. Noticing the new dip in my confidence, my parents encouraged me to go talk to our school counselor or to see someone off campus. After talking to a school counselor 2 or 3 times, I decided that I was fine. I had people to talk to. I had friends that I could lean on, but as I said before, I was struggling. I just wanted everything to go back to normal. At first, it was easier to pretend that that had never happened. If I didn't think about it, if I didn't talk about it, then maybe it would be like it never happened. None of my friends brought it up. They sensed it was a delicate subject. Then, when I was ready to talk about things, I felt like too much time had passed and now everyone was over it, so to speak. If I brought it up, I worried I would be labeled as attention seeking, when really the same thing could be said about it today, me speaking about this over a year later. When I did talk about it, I felt like I could only do so for a certain amount of time. I was never able to talk everything through or fully wrap my head around what had happened. The only time it was brought up in my life was while I was running errands with my mom. As soon as I stepped in the car, she would say, "How are you doing, really?" I never wanted to talk about it, so in true teenage fashion, the question received an eye roll and a monotoned, "I'm fine." Don't get me wrong, I really appreciated the support from my family, but I just couldn't admit to my parents that it was constantly on my mind, weighing me down. They thought I was doing well. I did not want to further upset them. Recovering from the impact of the relationship was much more different and difficult than I thought it would be. Not only did I have to regain my confidence and self worth, but I also had to get over what other people might think. There were numerous people who said to either me or my parents, "But she's such a strong, confident, intelligent girl. Why would she ever stay in a relationship like that?" Initially, I could not bring myself to explain the situation. It was really painful, and honestly, I was embarrassed by it. Then, after a while, I felt compelled to share everything and explain that emotionally abusive relationships are a lot more complex than people think. I felt the need to explain that they convince you that everything is your fault, and then they call you saying they love you and you can never leave them because they need you in order to live. It is impossible to know if they're being honest or just manipulating you into staying. I felt compelled to explain that I did know that it was no longer a good relationship for me to be in. But I was convinced that if I left and everything were to happen, and I was convinced that if I left and anything were to happen to him, I would feel responsible. Last summer, Brooks announced that there would be a new peer advisor program this year. As soon as I received the email that they were taking applicants, I knew I wanted to be part of the program. By becoming a peer advisor, I would have the opportunity to help people who needed someone to talk to in a more casual setting, which was exactly what I craved while I was struggling. Being a peer advisor this semester has inspired me to speak about this difficult situation. It took me a long time to find my voice on this topic, and it is still challenging to know how to discuss it. Staying silent through some conversations, while at other times maybe saying too much. But I do feel it is an important subject to talk about, and there is no right or wrong way to heal from something like this. A couple weeks ago, as I was writing this speech, my mom asked me if I ever regretted being in the relationship. My answer was a quick but definite no. I'm a strong believer that we don't make mistakes in life. We just create opportunities for lessons, and that this has turned out to be a hard but valuable one. Thank you.